Is it?
Serotonin. Yep.
Serotonin. Right. Thank you. Ask a nurse, she'll know the answer.
I'll give it a good shot anyway.
I'll have to put it in all my networking, my materials. Hello and welcome to this Facebook Live with Michele Scherr. Now, Michele, if you can hear me, you've gone a little bit frozen, but no, actually.
Can you see me?
I can see you.
Okay.
I can see you. Got it.
Okay.
Sorry, apologies. It just went to a different window that it hadn't gone to before, which is why we've got a little bit of back, whatever. This is the first time it's done that, so I will know from now on. Hello, Michele, and welcome to this Monday morning 9 a.m. Facebook Live. Now, I would say that's early, but both of us have been up even earlier because we were both up at 7 a.m. for the Joyful Frugalista Virtual Connect. So this is actually almost like sleeping in, right?
It is. Good morning, and thank you so much for having me on today. I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and speak to you and speak to everybody else in the Facebook group as well. And yes, it's early, so I'm most likely going to struggle with words. So it seems. Well, I've wanted to have you as my guest for some time. I really am an admirer of the work you do. It's pretty awesome. And I know our topic today is what gets you up on a cold winter's morning. But before we get to talking about that, let me introduce you and how fabulous you are. So you're a business coach, and I think you're a consultant as well. But before you did all of this, you worked as a registered nurse with the Royal Australian Air Force, RAAF, for almost 20 years. And in that role, I believe you worked in some real hardship places, places that were actively in operation, having to fly in and evacuate people who've been critically injured. Yeah, that was, so I was an enrolled nurse first. So when I came out of school and that sort of thing, they just transitioned to doing uni training for registered nurses, and I kind of went, I don't really want to be a guinea pig. I want to hit the ground running. So I went and did enrolled nursing first, and then I did my uni studies when I was about in my mid-20s. And at the end of the first year, my husband and I split up, so I became a single mum. And going into the second year, it was really quite difficult to handle the finances of studying full-time, looking after kids, having the kids in childcare so that I could do clinical placements and all that sort of thing. So I decided to join the Air Force and on their undergraduate scheme. So I did that. And
I'm just laughing a little bit, job with travel and danger, easier with a family.
Well, it's amazing, isn't it? Because it wasn't until after I joined. So I joined at the beginning of 1998. And Australia went to East Timor at the end of 1998. And it was just like, oh, dear, what have I actually done here?
Because we hadn't been that operational for some time. Like when you joined, I guess not much had been happening.
Yeah, that's right. It had been a peacetime force, and that's what we were used to. Like there was an occasional thing like Rwanda in 1994, but definitely we'd been a peacetime force. And then all the deployments started. And by the time I did my studies, finished my studies, did my consolidation, my clinical consolidation of a few years in the public system. And then I went off to start repaying my time. And my intention had only ever been to serve what I owed. So it was a 1-for-1 plus 1 year. So I owed 23 months or something like that. But I got there and it was more comfortable. Like, in terms of change, we talk about it has to be uncomfortable where you are to make that change. There has to be like more comfort on the other side of the change. Well, for me, there was much more comfort in staying than there was in getting out. So I kind of, so I stayed almost 20 years.
Well, that's quite remarkable. Yeah. But it's amazing how things happen like that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so what led you then to leave that, talking about change being uncomfortable, to leave that to do what you're doing now? And how does that make you feel happy enough to get up super early on a Monday morning?
Okay, so it's a bit of the backstory is kind of going. So when I left my role in defence, because it was more than a job, it was more than a career, it was a role, and I totally identified with that person, that helpful person, that person who's of service, you know, all of that sort of thing. I left kicking and screaming. It was not really my choice. I had sustained some injuries and some illnesses while I was serving, and I managed to hide for almost 6 years by the time I was discharged. It was a medical discharge. And yeah, by the time I was discharged, I was suffering PTSD, I was suffering major depression, I had some other ongoing illnesses, chronic illnesses, and I just didn't know what the future was for me. I didn't think there really was a future for me. And in hindsight now, there wasn't a future for me in that sphere, really. As that person, there wasn't a future for me. I had to change. And that was quite a bumpy process, like a really imperfect, bumpy process. And I think realistically looking at it, it had to be that way for it to get into my noggin, to get into my subconscious mind that it's time, Michelle, you need to do something different. So I came out of defence and I was at rock bottom, absolutely at rock bottom. I only just recently realised this, that I was just looking for things to fill in time until I died. I was just, you know, it was a terrible place to be. It was a terrible place to be. But having said that, you know, there were elements of joy. Like I got married just after I was discharged. I'm married to the love of my life, and he's just awesome for me. And so there's a number of bright spots in there that kind of kept me going. And one of the things I realised very early with my health background, so even though I was overwhelmed and distraught and felt so worthless and undeserving, and I mean really worthless and undeserving, I had these little bright spots, and I knew from my nursing background that if I wanted to pull out of this, that I needed to be around positive people. I needed to get out of the house. I needed to do physical exercise. I needed to look after myself from a dietary perspective. And so I set about doing that, and I joined a multi-level marketing company in skincare, and that got me out of the house, and it got me around positive people that were all into personal development. And it was just awesome. It was a great starter. And it allowed me the time to build my resilience muscle, if you will. And so from building my resilience, I got to a point where I thought, you know what I loved to do when I was in Air Force was mentor. I loved to mentor my juniors and essentially teach them my job so that they were developing. And I always had this thing that once they learned how to do my job with them was complete, because they were able to move on with so much more depth and width of experience. So I thought I might get into this. And so that's what I did. I went into mentoring. I spent 2021 kind of doing a lot of research and playing with different things to find what fits. I'd certainly gone from a very masculine environment and trying to be very masculine, emulate a very masculine way of working. And at the beginning of last year, I discovered that there was feminine and masculine energy. And I was like, oh, wow, why didn't I know this? So last year, I spent a lot of time exploring the feminine and having all these ahas of, no wonder I was so tired. No wonder I was, I felt like I was burnt out, because I was going against my nature and thinking that was the way it had to be.
Yeah. And that was, I must say, for many years what we've been taught. And even like recently we were rewatching Top Gun. We haven't seen Maverick yet, but, in mid-1980s, and, we thought he was such a hero. He's doing this and doing that. So we've just rewatched it and we've gone like, oh my God, who ever thought of such a stupid idea as, the top person in their class? Clearly this is leading to burnout. It's leading to dangerous situations such as what actually happened, loss of life, loss of aircraft. And crucially, they were not working together as a team. I was like, or following the directives. You had all these rogue people running off doing things. And, you know, in my background in foreign affairs, I was like, oh my God, how many international incidents are they nearly causing by this? Because they don't have effective, strong team culture. But at the time, I think for so many years, we thought it was all about getting to the top of the apex, being the top, a very male competitive, who can run faster, who can fly faster, who can be the best.
And you know, you've hit the nail on the head there. That was my experience. And I was burning out trying to do exactly what you're talking about. And, you know, you talk about the running roughshod over things and not following directives and all of that sort of thing. It was always no, that's right, I've got to do it by the rules. And
well, the rules are often there for a reason. Not always, but often.
Yeah. And there are ways of challenging the rules if you don't agree with them. But I'm just like, I look back now and I think, oh my gosh, because you've hit the nail on the head. That's exactly the mindset that I was trying to keep up with. And so beginning of this year, this year has all been about rebalancing the masculine and feminine and finding what actually does work for me. Because I think everyone has masculine and feminine energies within them, and it's about where you spend your time. And if you're spending too much time in one energy, that's not good. So it's about, how do I make this work for the best to achieve my purpose? So it's a bit of a long-winded kind of, how did I get here?
I agree with you so much, and I really relate to that. You know, in my case, having had a career in foreign affairs, and there are now more women in foreign affairs, but there weren't when I started. And I started my career as a civilian in defence, and I was always working in areas where it was largely male-based. So it's not men or female, but it's just that sort of achieve results at any cost. And often they're not really real results. They're just kind of like, because you're not stopping to ask, is this what we should be doing? Could we be doing this better? How could we be working more collaboratively? It's just like, I'm the best at delivering this outcome. It just becomes... it becomes very damaging longer term in terms of team morale.
Absolutely.
And in my case, I had an issue when I was on posting. I had a domestic violence issue, and it just was almost seen like a weakness. And so therefore you don't get support with that.
Yes. And I totally agree. Because I basically emulated all of that, and I look back now and I think, oh wow, I can see how it got to the point where I burnt out and where I became ill. And, I can see how it all happened in retrospect. At the time, all I knew was I was tired. Like I'd get up, tick my list off of things I had to do at home. I'd go to work. I'd work 10 hours or more. I'd come home. I'd do everything I needed to do at home for the boys. Then I'd be ticking more things off my work list. Then I'd go to bed. I'd get up and I'd repeat. I'd do the same thing over and over again. And I was just like, now I look at it and think, oh my gosh, if I just slowed down and taken the time, instead of taking on three different full-time roles and, working harder at my own cost to deliver outcomes, because usually it was my cost, because I would alienate people. I would fatigue myself even further. I would just go like a bull at a gate at everything. And now I kind of look at it and go, gee, there's some lessons to be learnt there. And I hope I've learnt them. Yeah,
there'll be new lessons though. There always are, but I know you're doing some great teaching other people and mentoring. But just to share something I read recently. So there's a writer, blogger in the financial independence retire early space in the US. She goes under the mantle of Purple Life. So she is a Black American woman who I think she was in marketing, but she decided very early on that she'd be successful in her career with a view to retire early. So she did that. She retired and she left. And she's just shared, oh my God, this just happened. She was at a function where two of the people in other organisations she had a lot of trouble working with, like one who used to message her at midnight, suddenly went, I'm so envious that you're able to retire early. And she was like, whoa, like where has that happened? Because she'd always assumed that they were sort of, I guess, on that treadmill of wanting to work harder because they loved it and they're obsessed. But sometimes you can be work harder and do that because you just can't get off the treadmill or you're fearful.
That's
it's
right.
not necessarily because you're filled up with joy and it's where you want to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things I found, and I think this is common across healthies in particular, so health professionals, so whether it be a doctor, physio, nurse, whoever, is that, and something I'm writing about this week is that early on in my career, so I'm going back to when I was a late teenager, we were taught that it's not okay to get emotional in front of patients. Because then it becomes about you and it needs to be about the patient. So you're there to support the patient. It's not okay to get emotional. So one of the tricks I learned was for me, I would put my emotions in a little box and I would put it in the logistics warehouse of my mind, going, I'll come back to that once I've finished dealing with this situation in front of me. Yeah, well, PTSD put the leveler in on that one because then I had to revisit. And I had to start looking at those emotions, not necessarily the situation as such, but I had to start looking at those emotions and start feeling those emotions. So it's a great leveler, isn't it? It's things that you learn early on that bring you apart, I guess.
Yeah, exactly. And especially during COVID, anyone working in health, it's been a very difficult time. And a lot of people working in other related industries, it's been very difficult.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I decided to do this year was create a course, a 12-week course, to go from chaos to clarity. So I called it Living Life on Purpose because I really wanted people to think about and make decisions instead of just, okay, well, this is how it's meant to be. So I'll just keep on that treadmill that you mentioned, but really stop, pause, and look at, do I like what I'm doing? Is it serving me? And if it's not, what can I do about it? And start to look at those things that you believe when you're younger that start to bring you undone as you get older. And and put them on a path to really being the person that they want to be, living the life that they want to live. And I mean, it's not a short-term thing in any way, shape or form. The 12 weeks is an introduction, which is why I called it the ABCs, because it takes a lot of thought. And as you mentioned before, there's always something more to learn. One of the things I found probably about 2 months ago, I had an experience and I believed something from my childhood that said, who do you think you are? You're nothing special. Ooh. And that came up. It came up and it came out of nowhere. And because I'm now in this space where I can go, I'm going to let myself feel this. Oh my gosh, the emotion that came out with it was just incredible.
And did someone say that to you, or is this something that just you felt?
No, I'd actually finally allowed myself to put in for this horse riding weekend. It's called the Remount Organisation, and they provide weekends of horse riding for first responders, ADF, veterans, that sort of thing. And basically you go along and they do everything and you just spend your time learning with the horse first up, and then they take you out into the paddocks and that sort of thing. And I have an existing lower back issue. It's a chronic issue, and it had flared because it'd been so darn cold. It had flared, and I got on the horse and I wasn't sure that I could actually stand up when I got off. So being who I am, I try, okay, I can push through this. I can do this, 100%.
I can push through this. Yep.
Yeah. Well, we started going out into the paddock and I realised that I can't push through this. I need to pay attention to it. So I stopped and I asked to go back. And so we walked back, and I was standing over near the wood fire, and one of the helpers came over, and because I said to her, "What can I do?" First thing what can I do? Let's get my mind off this. Let's do. And she was like, "No, you're here just to be here. You are special." And boom, that thought came up. I'm nothing special. What do you know, who do I think I am? I need to get in and help. I need to prove that I'm worthy. And I was like, holy cow. And that was it. Floods of tears. And so those guys just held space for me and let me cry, which was awesome, in the warmth, which was even better. And I'm tearing up just thinking about it now. They were an incredible organisation. But yeah, they just held space for me. And I mean, you know, we had another fellow that was out there about 6 months out of service. He was another medical discharge. And I heard him say, this is the first time, he was saying to me, this is the first time I've smiled or laughed in such a long time.
Oh,
and
my
I remember
goodness.
being there, and all I wanted to do was, you know, encase him in this bubble of love and say, you can do this, you'll get there, it's going to be okay. And yeah, it was awesome. It was an awesome weekend.
And I'm guessing in your career, you probably put everyone else first, like nurses probably often do, caring for everyone else a priority.
Yeah.
And like mums.
Like mums often do. Yeah. And you do. Like I heard something that was related to me fairly early on when we came to Canberra was for most women, love equals sacrifice. And it's putting everybody else first. So it's really relearning that if I don't put myself first, which is termed selfish, if I don't put myself first, I don't have the resources to continue to do what I love, which is giving to others. So that's been quite a mental gym of trying to get around that of, okay, I need to put myself first. So that's another thing that I certainly emphasise in the work that I do with women now is, okay, let's examine these things that you believe. Like I was saying before, let's examine these things that you believe. How does that work for you? How does it play out in your life? What actions does that take? And let's get in touch with what's really important to you. Let's look at your values. And a lot of people I've found don't actually know what's of most value to them. So for me, health is one of my top 5 values. And so what I do is towards health. So healthy mind, healthy body, you know, all of that sort of thing. Doesn't mean I don't stuff up, but overall, that's my intention, is to be healthy mind, healthy body, healthy relationships, things around health. So yeah.
And you're right. No, you haven't. But I think sometimes when we talk about our values, sometimes, particularly as women, we worry about having the values that we think we should have.
Yes.
Rather than ours.
Yeah.
And yeah,
there's absolutely. And that's one of the exercises I take people through, is finding out what's really important to them, not the outside world, what's important to them, not what they should do, but what they want and what they desire. And it's incredibly liberating to go. For one lady in particular, one of her values was around teams and teamwork. And the way her work had reorganised it, she didn't feel that was teamwork because she'd been having such a bumpy time at work. And it's like when we talked it through, when we looked at her values and that sort of thing, she's like, oh my gosh, that's why I really don't feel like I fit anymore, because it was crossing with her personal values. So,
yeah. And so was she able to resolve that? Did she move to a new area or?
No, we looked at options for her of how she could make it feel more like a team. And you know how she could morph it into something that felt really good for her. And so yeah, we tried out a few things. We it was really good, because it was a test and adjust. Does this work? Does that work? And we got to a happy medium where she goes, okay, now I feel better going to work, because she was at the point where she didn't want to go to work. She'd wake up going, oh no, I don't want to go to work. But yeah, so she it was fantastic. I love seeing the clients feeling that joy and happiness again, and going, okay, I feel like I've got some say in this, and I feel like I can step into my own. I'm empowered to step into my own strength, and I just love it. Absolutely love it.
Fabulous. And so what gets you up in the morning? Do you have any particular rituals that get you up in these cold mornings, or is it is it something deeper?
Well, I think it's probably a little bit deeper. One of the things that I discovered on my journey over the last few years was what was really, those issues that when they're brought up, I can't help but climb up onto this huge soapbox and go, I'm angry about this. So for me, having worked both overseas in third world countries in my defence capability, and then here in Australia my background's emergency, and I did do some stuff in ICU as well. And the way women are treated. And it really gets up my nose. Some of the areas that I worked in Australia, domestic violence victims would come in and you're treating them, and the way, the prejudices that people would have, and it's just kind of like, okay, how can we best support you where you're at, rather than, if you don't do this, you're not worth my time. Whoa, I really, my attitude was, okay, you need to get to a point where you're ready. How can we help you where you're at to move forward? And even overseas, the attitudes to women in some of the countries I've worked in, where they're like, oh, we honour our women, and we cherish our women and that sort of thing. And I go, your idea of cherish and honour is very different to my idea, and very a cultural mismatch. And then, the statistics that were released last year about women over 55 being the greatest or the fastest growing group of homeless people, women reaching retirement age or finishing their working life and having so much less than half of what men have in terms of superannuation. And it just kind of, that combined with what's a social expectation versus a personal expectation. And I kind of started to realise how these social norms had really impacted women's lives. And going forward, reaching the end of your working life and facing homelessness and poverty is not okay. So I kind of did a lot of deep work. And one of the things I found was my superpower is kind of about achieving and getting that clarity around what I wanted and achieving. So now I look at how can I best support other women, because service is still one of my top values. How can I support other women so that when they reach retirement age, they're not facing poverty and they're not facing homelessness? Because I just think that's such a tragedy that they do everything that society tells them to do. And, things happen, probably, 40s, 50s, things happen.
Mm-hmm.
It might be divorce, end of a long-term relationship, children leave home, all of that sort of thing. And you suddenly go, oh, wow, this life is not bringing me joy. It's not bringing me happiness. And you make those changes, but then you find that with the aging body that you can't do what you could have done if you were 40 and 50. So I've kind of got this mission that I want to help as many women as I can, and in helping them, help their children and help their children's children. So I look to help women overseas as well as here in Australia, different things that I can do for different women. And as the opportunities come up, I certainly jump on that bandwagon to do what I can to make that difference. And that gets me up every morning. I'm like, okay, for some women, they don't have the choice. They don't have the luxury of having choice like I do. So the least I can do is honour them in getting up, getting going, and doing what I can to help.
Well, thank you for the work you do. And yeah, it is much needed. It is still a growing issue. The gender pay gap's currently about 15%. And that's, pretty much just like in the same profession. And that doesn't even begin to really delve into women-centred professions like nursing. Now, of course, there are male nurses, but it is often still predominantly a female profession, as is teaching. And, I was really surprised and shocked actually that during COVID, like it was still the building industry and others, the traditional male kind of industries that got the handouts early on rather than nursing. I was like, where were the scholarships for nurses? Where were the extra performance pay and everything else for nurses? Because they were the ones that were holding everything together during that time. And I don't think it's just me. I think the election result that we've seen is, largely testimony to that people, a reflection of that the people did recognise that there were more things happening. So now, Michelle, where can people find you and where can people find your offerings? Please do go into the Joyful Business Club Facebook group after this and put your details in so people can know where your offerings are and how to find them.
Okay, awesome. I will do that. So I've got a website, and obviously I'm on the socials. I'm on Facebook, Instagram and LinkedIn. So following me along on those and my website, the ideal place. So even if you sign up for the newsletter on my website, that will keep everybody informed of what's going on. Thank you so much for having me, Serena. I really enjoyed chatting with you today.
I am so glad to finally have you as a guest. It's been an ambition for a while, so I'm really, really excited by it. So thank you so much. Wonderful. Thank you.
Very welcome.